kick it off here in a second. So, hi, this is Alex from the Millennial Entrepreneur. I'm here with Kimber, who used to run the marketing for my Entourage Effects company, and she did an amazing job. So happy to have you here, Kimber.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. So if you could just tell me a bit about your journey, kind of whenever you graduated and what got you into the marketing advertising on the digital side, and maybe what took you from the point of maybe working with another company to deciding, I want to make this on my own. I want to take this take the reins in my own hands.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. So I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a communications degree and a minor in digital studies because at the time that I graduated, social media really wasn't not even close to what it is today. I had an Instagram, but that was when Instagram was like for photographers and people sharing just photos. So when I graduated, it wasn't an option. I know now there are social media majors, minors, et cetera, that you can get classes you can take, but that definitely wasn't a thing at the time when I graduated. So I went into traditional marketing. I was always very creative. So I went to be a producer at an agency down here in Dallas, which is where I'm still located. Worked on TV commercials, worked on magazine editorials. It was really great. However, with the agency life and being a producer, you are often the last person to get things at the end of the day. And at that time, just starting out, I was kind of like, I just want to leave here at 5 o'clock. Like, I am not interested in working any longer than I need to. And even though I really did enjoy what I was doing until 8 p.m. when I had plans that night, I really was not loving it so much.
Yeah.
So then I went over to the client side of things, as people call it, being the person who would essentially enlist the help of different agencies. So I worked at a software company and did some marketing for them. And when I was there is where I got to dabble a little bit more into email marketing, into some influencer teams, into a little bit of social media. And that is where my eyes were really open to how much data is available for people who are not just saying, hey, this was your TV commercial and it was viewed on this many televisions, or this magazine was sold to this many people, but you can't actually tell how many people read the article, took any action from the commercial or whatever. So starting to see how much data was available in social media just totally opened my eyes. And in terms of what made me want to start my own company was, one, and I had only been working in a 9-to-5 traditional job for 2.5, 3 years. So it's not like I was like a 10-year vet in email marketing or something like that. But I was like, man, I really don't want to have to start my salary all over again and get like an entry-level position, because I just felt like at that time I was such a hard worker and so committed to what I was doing. And I didn't want to take a step back just to start something new when I knew that I could, and also all these social media gurus like make all the money in the world and do all this and have all these different cars and mansions and everything like that. I'm like, oh, I could do that. Not like that's what motivated me at the time. Clearly, I still don't have any of those things. But I was like, I don't want to do this for somebody else. And I don't even know if I'll like doing it. So I'll just kind of start to dabble on the side, see if I like it. And then maybe I will. I always had the idea of starting my own agency, but I was like, even if I just get some experience and then I could take this to a company to hire me, be like, I have this experience working with these clients. I just didn't want to have absolutely zero experience and have to go back to an entry-level job where I kind of already put in those like 2 to 3 years of doing something else. So that's really what made me start my own agency. I had a few clients, even though did that for free or very close to free when I was just starting, just trying to get clients in the door and really just for me to practice and see if I like doing social media stuff. Yeah.
How would you say, I've talked to someone else on this before, but like going from zero to your first client,
Mhm.
You know, he was referring it to, he was like pitching a dream or something that may happen, and the client really needed to believe in that person to make it real.
Mhm.
How did you overcome the getting your first customer, you know, having them believe in you, and then really producing or creating a quality product?
Right. Yeah, totally. So it definitely helped that I had a background in marketing. So people trusted, like, hey, if an agency hired her at some point, she has to be somewhat good at what she does. And so I think it was more so having a background in marketing that I had worked in for 2 to 3 years, but being in that social space and doing it on your own, it was more so just being likable, completely
Oh,
honest,
yeah.
building trust with that person and laying out a plan. And also, what I think is one of the biggest things for anybody starting a new business and trying to get clients, no matter what area you're in, especially, if you're service based, like doing digital marketing for somebody, is being able to show somebody how you're going to track your success. Because if you just go into this and you're like, I do social media marketing, crickets. There's, okay, yes, there's, are you posting to Instagram? What are we doing? So if you have a very set outline of what you're going to be doing, and then say every single week you're going to receive this data from us. With that data, we're going to be able to tell what we did well, what we didn't do so well. So definitely now I do a lot better job at that than when I did back in the day. But back in the day, I was like, we'll send you stuff that, we'll make sure that you're getting more views and impressions and everything like that. So just having data to match up to your actions, so they know that you're held accountable in some way, or there are some metrics that you're going after. Otherwise, if you're new and you're not being quote unquote graded on anything, it's kind of scary for them as a business owner to do that. And especially, our first client was for free. So like,
Mhm.
they weren't losing much except for handing us over data or the information to log into their accounts. So they didn't have a ton to lose there. But then after doing, I think I only did one client actually for free. And it was more so for like just a few months that I was like,
Mhm.
hey, for the first 2 months, I'll do this for free. And then after that, it'll be X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
And if you don't like me, you don't need to work with me anymore. But just giving them the peace of mind that,
Yeah.
hey, you're not stuck in this. We're going to be working up to these data metrics or judging ourselves on this. And I say ourselves and we so much because now I have a team, but back then I didn't. So that's just a habit at this point. But it was just me at that point,
Yeah.
doing stuff for free. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we worked together, you took me through, I think, your onboarding section, and it had a couple calls involved, and I think the calls made, we even met in person, but the
Mm-hmm.
calls made it very different when you're talking to someone. And I think that's something I've seen you really promote, is like the audio or video, is like
Mm-hmm.
you really hear someone's voice and you can really pick up on their, I don't know, their speech patterns, or you see them in person or in video, you can really see their facial expressions, and it really brings a different kind of like touch with them. They're like, they're real, and it's not just this random person you're talking to. But I
Oh yeah.
thought that was a very powerful piece.
Yeah, no, that is huge. And I try and get on video so much for that point because, especially, I think COVID and quarantine showed us this, that you can, obviously, it's not the same, but having a connection over FaceTime, Zoom, whatever it might be, is still connection, and still a great way to get to know somebody, and connect with someone. So, just like you said, if you're on Instagram or you have an email list and you're sending videos, or it's YouTube or whatever it might be, video is such a great way for you to get to know somebody and just discover if you're going to enjoy working with them or not, because there are so
Mhm.
many different people in the world. Not everyone is for everyone. And even in a working relationship, you have to enjoy talking to that person and know that they know what they're doing, and seeing that over and over again, it builds that trust factor. And yeah, if it's a faceless agency. You're like, is this like overseas somewhere that I don't even know where my work
Mhm.
is getting done? Like, I don't know who these people are that I'm talking to. I talk to somebody different every single time. I don't know how there's checks and balances system there. So I would say for me, it was just making it very personal, but that wasn't hard considering I was doing it all by myself when I first
Mhm.
started. And two, that's just my personality type, is making people feel heard and understood and like, hey, we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do. So it was definitely easy for me to do that. I can understand how some people might not like doing that, but that was just my personality type. So easy to execute on that.
Yeah, I've just in the interviews I've been doing, the likability factor has been something that's like a core belief through everybody. Like if you have two competing agencies, why would you go with one versus your agency with
Mhm.
Kimber? What's the trigger? Maybe their benefits are roughly the same, or what they can offer is roughly the same. Maybe the
Mhm.
price structure is roughly the same. So it's like, I'm going to pick the person that I want to, or that is easier to talk to.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, who would you
Yeah.
want to hang out with on a day-to-day
Hmm.
basis? And that's even something that, as our agency grows and everything, we're able to pick clients in the same way as well. Like, I've been doing this long enough now that I can kind of sense some red flags when I'm talking to somebody for the first time. Like, I don't know if we're going to get along. Like, I don't know if our um, outlook for the possibilities, one, in
Hmm.
this uh, project, essentially, growing your business using social media. I don't know if our views on how we can do this, or um, even like having a certain belief in me. I used to take any client just because I was like, I want clients, I want income, whatever. And now it's like, if I can kind of sense that they're doubting what social media can do for their business, or they're doubting going into this. And there's a difference between like just asking a bunch of questions and getting clear on something versus like being really skeptical on how this all works. And you can almost tell when someone is going to, I've come to this point because I've experienced it 3 times. And after the third time, I was like, all right, I have to figure out what happened here. It's just people who are going to essentially like nickel and dime you and then say, hey,
Uh,
I actually don't think you did what you said you were going to do. So I want this all for free. So that's
wow.
actually happened twice. The third time was like not as bad, but just people who they're like, they maybe don't think social media is going to work, or they think that social media can happen so fast. And just because it's social, and yeah, in theory, I could put a post up in 5 minutes. It doesn't mean that the strategy within that post, or the post within that strategy, doesn't take more than 5 minutes. So I've just been able to kind of sense how people think about social media as a marketing platform, and seeing if I want to work with them. So I have to know that if I'm judging them based on if I want to work with them, they're also judging me if they want to work with me. And if we just don't mesh, that's not bad. You don't need to work with
Hmm.
everybody. But like you said, you want to work with people who you're going to enjoy working with. And even if it's a little bit more expensive, if you have less stress throughout your week as a business owner, and you know that this person is not going to drop the ball and is always going to communicate with you, not having that stress on your shoulders is worth
Hmm.
the extra whatever dollar amount. And just knowing like that you like talking to them and you don't dread that call every single week when you have to meet up with them or something like that. Huge difference.
Yeah, the communication piece is so key. Just being able to not fear, like exactly what you're saying, not fearing the call when you call someone, and then also being able to bring someone bad news and it
Yeah.
not be like the end of the world, like everything's crashing down. Bad news is
Right.
going to happen. Things are not going to go well. And you need to be able to sit there and tell someone straight to their face very clearly what's happening and have no fear of like it blowing up into a bad situation. Now, if it's like, if it's continued things happening, whatever it may, maybe something needs to change or something. But like,
Mhm.
if it's something that, you can't really control or things just happen, I feel some people like blow up and make those things, what is it, making like a molehill into a mountain or whatever, like
Yeah.
something that you could just deal with and get over with and move on into some like giant issue.
Right. No, you're so right on that. And that's what it goes back to. just, yeah, A and B, client and agency relationship, is that as a client, you have to understand things are going to happen. And as an agency, you also have to understand that, things with your client are going to happen, and being able to have that two-way communication. And like, I have one of my clients, she's one of my only female clients. And so she's been an awesome mentor to me. And she just understands, the ebbs and flow of business. And if our income from our social media markets aren't as big one week, it's like, well, this always happens. Like, it's always an ebb and flow. As long as next week the numbers are back up, it's fine. And for some other people, I could see how they could be like, we made $1,000 less this week. What's going on? It's like, it's not as many people bought this week. Like, that's just kind of how it happened. So I think just, yeah, being able to have a firm understanding of what it is that, and that's for anybody. Even if it's like thinking totally different, like a chiropractor. Like, if I go to the chiropractor one time and I'm expected to be fixed that one time, there's clearly just the expectations are not aligned correctly. So just having understanding, and I think clear expectations and communication are literally the foundation of every relationship in this world, whether it's client, personal, family, everything. So that is something that I am super passionate on. So definitely brought it into my business. And when I tell people about, going back to the likability factor, telling people how to grow their business, I grew mine basically just on word of mouth and connecting with people myself, which, like you said, is kind of how we got connected. And so just being likable and friendly and open. And even though it might not be super comfortable, like, people are so shocked to find that I used to be shy. Like, I used to not like talking to people, but when I moved to Dallas, when I moved to Dallas, I was like, well, I know nobody, so I guess I should start talking and start trying to make friends, like with my own group of friends. Obviously, that's how everyone is. Like, with your own friends, you can talk to people and, whatever, but being in a social situation, having to like talk to a stranger, that would be something that 5-6 years ago, I would have been like, no, I do not want to get put in that situation. And now talking to strangers is like my lifeblood of how I built my business, essentially. So it's not comfortable, and you don't have to be good at it right away, but you just have to keep practicing.
Yeah, I think communication is one of those, or talking with people is one of those things that, you can just keep taking a shot every day or week. There's enough people out there that you can mess up quite a few times, or make an awkward introduction to where maybe that becomes funny, or, maybe I've seen, it's almost like communication, or like talking with people, like stacks on itself. Cause it's like you start talking to one person, and then someone sees you talking to someone, and then they think you're more approachable. So they're like more likely to come and talk to you, or grow into that person's network.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. And the client that I was talking about, she had brought me to something here in Dallas called Biz Owners Ed. And I really liked it because it was a lot of like older business owners. I'm not sure if you've experienced this, starting your own business and everything. And then there's all these young millennials, like, I made $1 million in my first year, and all these like extravagant stories. I'm just like, what? Like, like, that's just bogus. And that's so frustrating. And even if it's true, that's great for you. But like, tell me more about yourself. Like, I want to know the dirt, like, how long did it take? Like, all your failures and all this stuff. So I went to this like 3-month long seminar series called Biz Owners Ed here in Dallas. It's awesome. And business owners from all across the country, mainly in the Texas area, would come and speak on their experiences. And they were all like more seasoned, established, and they're telling more so like their story from how they got started, just like this podcast, essentially. And it was so refreshing for me to learn about people's experiences. But in that, me going to this with a lot of people who are older than me, more experienced than I was, and more just had businesses for longer, I was terrified. I loved listening to the presentations, but I would come right when it started. And this was even like 2 years ago. I would go right when it started because I didn't want to have time where I had to talk like too long to people. Like, I could handle like 5 to 10 minutes, but like having to talk to people. And I know at that time, because then I went back last year and it was a totally different story. It was just because I wasn't super solid in like my exact offer yet. Like I knew I did social media and I know I did digital marketing, but even at that time, I would kind of like, if someone needed something, I would be like, oh yeah, we can figure it out. And now we have like 3 main areas that we focus in and we don't do anything else.
Mm.
And at just really niching down and knowing exactly what we did made a day and night difference, a night and day difference from one year to the next, having to talk to all these people. But yeah, even 2 years ago, I was terrified at going to talk to these events. But just like you said, you're at a table with somebody, you're talking with someone, they know somebody, they come and talk to you. And then it's like, okay, this is getting easier. This is getting less awkward for me. This is fine. Everything is fine.
Yeah, I heard just on the like millionaire successes,
Mhm.
people that, you hear all those stories. I kind of got two parts to that. One, I've heard, or there's a marketing guy I was listening to, and he was saying, you see these people come up and then all of a sudden they're somebody. They have some business and then all of a sudden they're a millionaire. But
Right.
what many times you don't see is that they spent 4 years making this foundation and then they
Hmm.
had one viral thing. So all you see is like that tip of the iceberg. You don't see the rest of the iceberg that helped build or build that thing. And it's, in my opinion, I think people love the like romantic side of business. They love the like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you could start a shoe company and it'll be Vans and it'll be just a massive success. And all of a sudden you'll be a millionaire and everything will be good in your life. And,
Hmm.
I don't really quite believe in that. But one of the
Right.
things I was going to start with the podcast, or one of the foundation ideas, was going to be like, I feel like a lot of people are fed a silver bullet, right? Like I
Hmm.
feel like you go on YouTube or you go on Instagram and like here's this like 21-year-old kid that sold shoes since he was 10 years old for some reason, and
Right.
now is like, I this is an example I saw him on YouTube, but is now with like, 2 Chainz or all these people selling like hundreds of thousands of dollars of
Right.
shoes like a month. And it's
I know.
just like,
What was I doing as a kid? I was playing outside when I was 10. I didn't get
yes,
the start. My bad.
exactly. I wasn't hustling with like, whatever I could buy or cards or whatever I could do at the time. I was just like being a kid, and now
Right.
now I'm getting to the point where it's like, okay, I need to define a couple things that I need to, look for growth to the future and things like that. But it's just not a silver bullet. And there's a lot of things that you're fed that's just the tip of the iceberg. You don't see the bad part.
Right. And I think that's so important. I was just actually talking to a friend yesterday about this, and she was kind of saying the same thing, like, all right, I need to start deciding like what I really want to do. Like I'm doing kind of all these things and decide what I really want to do. And then I just kind of, I don't think we've been friends forever. And but we weren't connected when I had started my business and everything. And I mean, I had my full-time job, I had a part-time job, and I was building this digital marketing agency on the side. So I had 3 jobs, which I think a lot of people don't do, because I was like, in order for me to quit my job, I need to not worry about money. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be like, I need to get this client because I'm terrified of how I'm going to pay my rent. So I was saving up money and working. And honestly, like I loved my part-time job. I was a cycling instructor, so I got paid to work out. It's not like I was doing something I hated, but I had 3 jobs essentially trying to grow this business. And it took me a year and a half to leave my full-time job. And essentially, I didn't even choose to leave. I got laid off, which I think a lot of people now can relate to with COVID, getting furloughed, getting, laid off and all these things. Our company went from public to private. So, or no, private to public. So they essentially like cut off all the branches of the software company that weren't sales, that weren't like making them money. And that's something I didn't even like tell people. I don't even know if you knew that, because I didn't tell people
No,
that for the longest time,
no.
because I had been wanting to quit my job for the longest time. I had money
Mm-hmm.
saved up to quit my job, but I was just so afraid to take that final leap and that final step. And I think even now for people who are, and it's so easy for me to be like, quit your job, whatever. But then the empathetic side of me is like, I know how scary that is.
Mhm.
And I know that it's very difficult to make millions of dollars on the side, or even thousands of dollars. I shouldn't even say millions of dollars. It's very difficult to balance your time like that and
Mhm.
to make enough money on the side before you can quit your full-time job and know that that income is always going to be there. But I did that for a year and a half, or maybe even 2 years, before I was laid off from my job and decided not to go back to another full-time job. And then even from that point, I feel like really this like 2020 was the year that now everything is so streamlined. Started building a team more than just me and one other person. So it took, I started maybe doing social like 3 years for me to even like be where I'm at now, which is like, I'm very comfortable, have a nice book of clients and everything like that. But I obviously want to grow a lot bigger in the next
Mhm.
5 years. I'm sure in 5 years, after I've been doing this for 10 years, someone's gonna be like, oh my gosh, it looks so easy for you. Like you just have all these clients and this is just so easy. And I think that's almost one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are like, oh my gosh, you're so lucky that you work for yourself and all these things. And I'm like, I do love it. And I love everything that comes along with being my own boss and building a team and everything like that. But it's still a lot of stress. And there's still so many behind the scene things that needed to happen in order to get here. And just like what you were saying, it's like you usually just see like this one little glimpse of somebody's
Mhm.
life being an entrepreneur and being their own boss and owning a business and everything like that. But you don't see all like the roller coasters that they had to go through. Even I always say that, I'm like, entrepreneurship is such a roller coaster. One day you're like, oh my gosh, my life is the best ever, I love it so much. And then the next day it's like boom. Like it's just such a wild ride and I love it. Definitely it's not for everybody. But yeah, I think a lot of times just on social media, entrepreneurship has been painted to be this like amazing, beautiful picture, which it is, but it's just, it does take a lot more work than it's made out to be. I think a lot of people see the kid selling shoes with 2 chains and is like, oh my gosh, this
Mhm.
was so easy for him.
Yeah.
But he probably did hustle a lot. I just didn't start at age 10, like we were
Yeah.
talking about. So
Exactly.
I just
And
totally went off on a tangent, but I think that's so
no,
important to like know that most of the people you look up to and follow, they probably been doing this for like 10 years and you just kind of got connected with them after they made it big. And
Mhm.
it's really hard to, or it's really easy to forget that they had to go through what you're going through right now.
Mhm. And one thing you mentioned is almost just like going from working within a company where someone else is driving the boat,
Yeah.
where you're now owning your own company, where you're driving your own boat. And
Mhm.
it is very intimidating to be like totally responsible for the success or failure of what's going on. And
Right.
it's just, it is not, because if you're in a company, you can kind of be like, if it's not doing well, well, it's X, Y, and Z. It's these other people are involved, these other things. But if you're running your own company, it's like, man, this is me. And
Right.
if this is not going well, then it is me. And that's a very tough pill for people to swallow, I think.
Right.
And it's not easy.
No, and that's definitely why one of my hardest things in, because there's only so much one person can do. And I've heard this from a lot of other friends that I have who have built and scaled business, is that the hiring process is, it's so difficult. And that's what's been the hardest part for me. And I'm still not a master at it because literally the people working for me now, one is an old roommate of mine. So, and I worked with her at my first marketing internship here in Dallas. So we've been friends for an extremely long time. I know how she works and she's very, I don't need to tell her how to do a lot of things. And that was the first person I ever hired like long term. And she's still part time, but I was like, okay, I am too afraid to hire somebody that I don't really know a lot about. So we'll start here. And it's been so easy. But now I'm like, okay, well, now you're like literally the easiest person to work with. So you're going to make hiring somebody else so much more difficult. And I have tried to hire some other people. It just didn't work out because again, the communication thing is so huge for me. Like if something is going wrong, do not be afraid to tell me, or do not be afraid to reach out for help. And even one of the one of the people that I hired that I really had no connection with, we went to the same college and we actually had the same job in college and we worked under the same boss who was very particular. I was like, all right, if she hired you, literally like she hired this girl 5 years later. She's younger than I am by quite a bit. But I was like, all right, if she hired you, like you got to be good. And like on her resume was something about communication. I'm like, boom, hired. Like if you
Yeah.
are like, you're like
Yeah.
communication is your lifeblood, and she is like such a good communicator, and that's literally like the number one most important thing to me. Because if you're having a problem, if we're having a problem, we can talk about it. That's great. And then the other person that works for me is my brother's girlfriend. So I'm like, well, she can't mess this up because she wants to marry my brother. So you know, she has
That
to
would
like,
be awkward.
we all got to be okay here. But
Yeah.
she's also like, you know, she's so organized, so good at what she does. And so I've been really lucky that just some of my personal connections are extremely talented and I can bring them on my team without having to go through a strenuous hiring process. But I've definitely had people who work for me who it just didn't work out. And then I was scarred and I was afraid to hire anybody else. But now definitely have a really great team of people that we can scale, and everyone does what they love to do in terms of the areas of marketing that we cover. And so I'm really excited about that. But even if one of them, I don't want to say messes up, but if something happens and I'm talking to a client, I always say, and for my personality type, this is very hard to do if it's not actually my fault. Like to say, that's my bad. Like I didn't communicate this well to her, which might have been the truth. It might have totally not been the truth, but to fall on the sword, even if you had nothing to do with the problem that happened, and just say like, this is my bad, because it sounds really bad if you're like, oh, well, this person didn't do that, I'm sorry, because it's like, well, it's your company. It is your fault at the end of the day, your fault, quote unquote, and your thing to fix. So that was definitely something that hiring a team was a big, I don't want to call it a pain point, but something really big to get over. And then falling on the sword when things went wrong and it wasn't actually your fault, but at the end of the day, it's your fault because it's still under your agency. That was something I'm still getting used to, because like I said, the people that I have with me are so good at what they do. And that's literally happened maybe twice that I've had to say that. But it's, you know, I'm still kind of eerie in that area because I'm like, I need to hire slow so that all of a sudden I don't have like 20 employees and I'm like, I don't even know who these people are and if they're good at what they do and if they're going to make mistakes and how many months. And yeah, so something I'm still working on for sure.
Yeah, that's I've been fairly lucky in my position just because I have had to hire and fire a decent amount of people, so I'm fairly comfortable with it now.
Right.
And it's gotten to the point where I can tell within the first meeting if someone's going to work out or
Mhm.
not. And there's
Good.
always things that you can't tell in a first meeting. But for the most part, you can get like 75% there. But I've seen it online, but it's something I really agree with. And it's hire slow, but fire quickly. And so if I ever think someone is going down the wrong path, and I call it like poisoning the well. So like if I think someone is talking poorly or like doing negative things at work, I think he or she is poisoning the other people around them. And I am better off. Oh, sorry, one sec. So, back on in a sec. Oh, Kimber, power just went out. Uh-oh. No worries. There you go,
I'm
Kimber.
so sorry about that. That was so weird.
That's okay. No worries.
Gosh, I feel like they're probably doing like construction somewhere and they hit something that they weren't supposed to hit because this is not the first time this has happened. But
Oh,
all
really?
right, back at
I got it.
it. Oh,
Let's see. So I
so we
guess
left off
we're
talking about hiring and
yes.
being able to kind of sense if things are going to work out or not, and having a good vibe with that. So, yes.
Here we are. Yeah, so the piece on hiring slowly and firing quickly. The
Mhm.
firing piece has been something that was somewhat awkward, or I think for anyone can be awkward, but whenever I started sitting down with people and, I'd have to let them go for whatever reason.
Mhm.
In many cases, it was something where the the relationship was not repairable or things were not going well, and it made me start to wonder, like, if they know that it's not going well. And in many
Mhm.
cases the person does know that it
Right.
isn't going well, and if I do this slowly or it gets dragged out for a couple more months or all these things, I could be hurting them because then they're not, changing their direction or going and doing something different that maybe they're more motivated to do. So it's become a lot easier from my point of view just to look at it as, they're not performing or the relationship isn't going well. They're aware of that. They
Mhm.
know that it's not going well.
Right.
They could likely do better somewhere else, or even this could be a good wake up call. So it has gotten, this isn't a good thing, but it has gotten a lot easier to do
Yeah.
that. But it's a very honest, straightforward conversation, and if you do have to do it very quickly.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I've heard that, hire slow, fire fast. I've definitely heard that before. And it's, at the end of the day, it is a business and they have to know that. And just like we talked about before with kind of knowing who you want your clients to be. And if you're hiring an agency, if you're hiring somebody, if you know you're going to vibe with them, if you know you're not. And if you don't think, just like you said, if this relationship isn't repairable or there's just something kind of off there, they probably feel it too.
Yeah,
And they're going to be so much happier elsewhere. And
it
they
could be
might
a
not,
relief.
yes, and they
Completely.
might not know that at the time. And even one of my friends has just been recently laid off again due to COVID things. And at the time, they're obviously super stressed out and like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And now 2 weeks later, they're like, I wish I could say thank you. Like, I feel like it's such a breath of fresh air because they hated their job, but
Mm-hmm.
it's income. So it's sometimes very hard to make that leap and make that decision when you don't have something lined up, kind of like me talking about my situation of not knowing, like, I always knew I wanted to quit my job, but it took me getting like our company laying off hundreds of people for me to figure out, like, all right, I guess I'll hop off this. And I just think even kind of changing directions here in terms of getting laid off and just with COVID and how many people have gone through that this year who probably wouldn't have if we were living in different circumstances. And I think it's just so important to kind of know how to make money for yourself and have something that is helping you out, because I was laid off from a full-time job and luckily I had a part-time job in this agency on the side. So I was making, and at that time I was making more money doing my side stuff than I was in my full-time job, but I was afraid that like the next day all my clients would leave me or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. But and then I was teaching indoor cycling, and then that company went bankrupt. So then that was also gone. And like, so thank God I always had something that I controlled. And not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur, but I think everyone can find some sort of side project that they really enjoy doing that is just an extra way for them to make income and just even like money to retire with and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like just a little extra something that is money that you control, because the world is a crazy place and you can get laid off and or just really hate what you're doing. And if you have the flexibility to be able to leave a place that you hate and go find something you really love, that is, I think that's just super important, and it gives you more freedom and flexibility as well.
Mm-hmm. That's I've been trading a lot more recently.
Hmm.
And I I don't know, I left enough of my savings where I could live off, if anything happened,
Hmm.
as a buffer, but then I took the rest and put it into the stock market and
Love that.
ended up making like a 30% return on my money, which was awesome over like in like a month. And so I was just sitting there looking at it and I was just like, if everything went downhill, I
Yeah.
could do this and maybe be less risky, but like still be making some money doing that. And it's
Right.
like, it was very funny or very strange to go to sleep one day with my money in the market and then wake up the next day to having like a 10% gain or whatever it was.
Right.
And
And
it's
that's
just
so
like
awesome.
I did nothing for that. I mean, I did some research and picked my timing right and threw my
Yeah.
money into it, but like for my physical work compared to my job, it is like I was making as much at my current job as I was in the market, and all I was doing in the market was getting in the market, pre-market in the morning at like, I
Hmm.
get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. So I was in at like 6, and then I would get out by lunch.
Yeah.
In just that couple hour time span, I was able to make as much as I make right now. And it's just like, wow.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that it doesn't have to be a business or like, oh, I need to make a business to do money on the side. Like investing is the easiest way for you to make more
Yeah.
money without, and I think it's kind of a scary thing. And I have, a decent investment portfolio, but one of my goals this year is to add more money into that. Just like you were saying, have enough money that if anything happened, I'm fine, but everything else go into the market because even me this past year, like not really paying it, obviously, like you said, I paid some attention to it. I did some research, but even me not doing a ton of that, I still had a pretty decent year. And it's just something that you don't have to think about. And it's not going to distract you from maybe your current job or what you're doing. It doesn't take physical labor or you having to be somewhere. And
Mhm.
just any way you can get different income streams is going to be a security blanket for you. And if you don't have to do anything, like super taxing to make that
Yep.
money, even better.
Yeah, it's just I've heard people talk about you don't want to be, or Robert Kiyosaki with the Rich Dad Poor
Oh my gosh,
Dad.
look at
Oh, do you have his book?
it.
Yeah,
I'm reading his book right
I
now.
love listening to Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
You're probably familiar, but he talks about going from an employee to the investor category, and that maybe you start out as an employee, but you need to, as quickly as you can, move to the investor side.
Mm-hmm.
And not only from like how much money you're making, it's how you're making your money. Like
Right.
if I work as an employee somewhere, my money is paid per hour, whether
Mm-hmm.
I'm salary or hourly. On some level, it's just hourly regardless. But if I go on to the investor side, now my money is can be being made while I'm at lunch doing
Yeah.
nothing,
Right.
and maybe even, I'm paying less taxes overall because all of my money is up in a company and the
Yeah.
government wants to promote businesses. So,
Right.
if I could, I would. I don't know how many people feel about this, but if I could, I wouldn't pay any taxes.
Oh, well.
And like some people believe that everyone should, but it's like, why? Like
Mhm.
Amazon Amazon was so successful, number one, because their market timing was just,
Mhm.
it was once in a
Unreal.
lifetime for them.
Mhm.
But they also went at a deficit for years. And so
Mhm.
what they're able to do is like imagine you're taxed at 30%, right? And every year you get taxed your 30% on your income or whatever it is. And then imagine if that goes to 0%. And instead of like however much money you're making, like maybe your 30% is $50,000. That
Mhm.
$50,000 could go to research or R&D or like other side projects that you believe are risky, but you think that there's some value to them. So that's all Amazon did. They just said, okay, we'll operate a deficit, but what we'll do is we'll just send that 30% off to these other side projects. Like they had like pet.com or like something for animals and like all
Okay.
sorts of other like side branches of Amazon that failed. But then
Huh.
their like audiobook service and like their video or streaming side crushed it.
Right.
And so
I
it's
didn't know
like,
that. Super interesting.
yeah, and it's just like, why am I going to shoulder the American government when I can do all of this R&D that can make my company better, that when I do start, being net positive, I can pay way more in taxes. Like if Amazon pays 2 years of taxes
Mm-hmm.
at, they didn't take as many deductions, they would probably flow out every other year that they could have paid taxes on.
Oh, for sure.
It's just like, why pay taxes, in my opinion? If I can get a good CPA and I can invest in external R&D or other things that I think are risky, why not?
I know. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And back to, trading time for money and everything like that. One of the first books I ever read that started getting me into this like entrepreneur mindset was the 4 Hour Work Week.
Mm-hmm.
And just talking about, how being more efficient with your time and the goal of no longer trading time for money. And even though what I do now, I do things for people, but I do them in a much higher hourly rate for how long it actually takes me, just because I have a skill set built up that is, and I think how I do things is better than a lot of people. So I'm able to charge a certain amount and, getting to that point and then hiring employees and hiring people to do these things for you. So then you are no longer trading time for money because you're not doing anything. It's the same thing with the stock market. It's the same thing with any investment, but just getting to the point where, again, you can go to sleep at night, wake up, and you have more money in your bank account than when you went to bed. And I think that is something that is kind of like a shift in our society is, we grow up, especially your first job, whether you're like a lifeguard, a bartender, whatever it is, you're trading time for money. That's just how it works, because when you're 16, you don't have a lot of skills, and that's fine. And so you grow up, but I think just like we have to get out of that mindset of, oh, I need to work 10 hours a day and I need to do this to make more money, and just to be really smart with how you're spending your money, where you're putting it. And just like you said, getting a good CPA to kind of help you out with those things. Like I pay myself a certain amount, but it is much less than what I could pay myself. So I don't need to pay as many taxes. So I'm not double taxed in terms of my business getting taxed, myself getting taxed. So there's a bunch of money just hanging out in that bank account that goes nowhere essentially. So that I'm not double taxed. And if I want to give myself a bonus or put that money towards something else, I can do that without getting taxed up the wazoo before I put that money somewhere. But yeah, I'm like literally looking at the book right now. 4 Hour Work Week was definitely life changing. It's just super motivating to be like, and I felt that so much because I was at a desk job at that time, and I had a manager who like micromanaged me like crazy. And I was like, he talks about like, well, if I can get all my work done the first 2 hours of the day, and I'm here for 2 hours instead of 8 hours, isn't that better for you? And I think our society now is like, work for 8 hours, even if you're done after 4. And I definitely hope that's kind of something that could shift and eventually like just be efficient and get your work done, and everyone will be happier when they're not doing something they hate or like having to drag it out.
I've seen a very powerful shift in my own thinking, very similar to what you're talking about. But like, why do I get paid what I get paid for the amount of time that I spend directly to like, so in CBD extraction, we make oil, right? Like, so there's like a certain amount of labor that's involved in making that product. But why do I get paid what I get paid without having to make any physical oil? And it's like, well, that's because my value is like what you were saying is information based. I can make a call within 10 minutes that could save the company a week of time.
Right. And
So
that's
it's
huge.
like, yeah, my one call like hiring people, letting people go, building the community. I mean, a good community to work within is invaluable. You know, that saves the company time. Just these quick decisions of what chemicals to use or what equipment to get is, you know, you could probably drill down and find a value, but in many cases it's just like you're way better off being in a position where you have time available to think and not do.
Yes.
One of
Yeah.
my old boss, who was the COO before me, had said he worked in the military for a long time in the Air
Mhm.
Force. And he said, someone had told him this, but he said, if you don't have at least like an hour in the day to kick your feet up on your desk and do nothing but think, then you're doing your job wrong.
Love that.
Because your value in that type of position on the macro side is not to do, it
Hmm.
is to think. And a lot of people think like, I get paid $1 because I made this value. And it's
Hmm.
like, not really. You know, there was a cool curve, like graph I saw that saw like time worked versus money made. And it was like going up, you know, more time you work, more you get paid, da, 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 da. And then you go up and you start getting into like the couple $100,000 a year,
Hmm.
like, you know, maybe 1 or 2 thousand,
Hmm.
um, or 100 or $200,000 a year. And then
Yeah.
it, yeah, sorry. And then it
Yeah.
starts falling
One or two.
off. Yeah. And then it starts falling off. And then you get into the millionaire section where it
Yeah.
just like plummets.
Yeah.
And it's like the amount of time they're actually spending working is almost like what would be like, you know, like 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
You know, they're just at this like critical mass where they like can't be stopped in a
Right.
sense.
I know. I love that. And I love that thought. And obviously, kind of just like what we were talking about in the beginning of this, where you're led into somebody's life at a certain point where you think they've made it, but you didn't see the time leading up to that was like, all right, work more, make more, work more, make more, up to that point where they start hiring people and they start building a team and they start even like pretty much everything our conversation is built up to this point, putting their money in other projects, making money in different ways, making like investing in property, like stuff like that, which a lot of millionaires make their money off of owning property because you know you manage the property and you might have to do some updates, but otherwise that's just money in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So having all these different things that when you get to this point and you can start investing in different things and then you make money and the amount of hours you work goes down, that's just a great place to be. And I think even how you said you kind of had like a shift in your thinking lately, and that's been something that I've had to focus on as well. And again, I said 2020 was a really big year for our company and our agency, and I feel like I worked less in 2020 than I did in 2019, but I had such a better year because everything that I did was just a little bit more calculated. It was more thought out. It was a very solid strategy that I could sit down and think about, sleep on, instead of like, I need to get this out as fast as possible. And I only have an hour to work on this. So I'm going to get this to them as soon as I'm done with it. Like if you have time to marinate over something, a strategy, particular in our business, how something looks, how ad creative looks, it's just so much better to be able to operate slow, which is like not like how our country likes to operate. I don't think it's always go, go, go. But when you do have that extra time, I love that quote. Like if you don't have time to sit back and like beat on desk with nothing, you're doing your job wrong. That is so true. And I think something that really describes how our agency has grown over the last year is like, take a breath. Let's think on this. Let's talk about it. Let's not just send it out right away. I think that's so critical.
Mm-hmm. So we'll wrap it up here in just a minute. But if you had a kind of final message to maybe if someone, you can pick whichever one you want, but if someone's leaving their job to go on an entrepreneurial pathway, or someone was looking to beef up their marketing side, or any kind of like final message or note that you had.
Right. I would say it's because I'm super passionate about helping people leave their jobs and everything, do what you have to do to be in a comfortable spot to leave your job, whether that's getting a part-time job so you do have money coming in because you don't want to make your decisions out of fear of not having money. So get to a point where you're going to be okay or set yourself up to be okay, but then just start building a network of people because oh my gosh, the quote, like your network is your net worth. It's cheesy, but it's true. The more people you know, the more people who might need your services and just talking to people more, telling people what you do, even if they don't need your service, they might 2 weeks from now run into someone who's like, oh, I'm really looking for marketing. Like my agency, we need a lot of help. Like, oh my gosh, I just met this girl, or I just met this woman, I just met this person who does marketing. I'll connect you with her. So, just building up your connections is one, it's going to give you support, which in an entrepreneur journey, it can be a little lonely because you don't have employees right away and you don't have, maybe you don't have a business partner. So it's good just to talk to other people in your area, but also building up like contacts are people who can help you down the line and get more clients in the door. And that's obviously what you need the most of in the beginning and always trying to get new clients and new people. So just make connections. And even though it's uncomfortable, talk to people, go to events, be uncomfortable, but get out there because it's so important to put yourself out there. And the more people you know, the more people you can help. So definitely my last words there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I totally agree with the networking piece. It's been so critical. And that's how I got my job initially, was just someone that
Yeah.
I knew that kind of liked me. And then they
Yeah.
vouched for me, and that vouched, sent me on my path that I'm on now. And it's that one relationship is invaluable.
Exactly.
Well, great, Kimber. I really appreciate it. You've been a great guest on here.
Yeah.
It's been really good talking with you, and maybe in the future I can have you on again. And
Yeah.
just hope you're doing well, and I hope you have a good day.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, and go Pack Go.
Yeah, I'll be
Game
looking
today.
for Lucas on there. I gotta
Yeah.
look out for number 62. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Good stuff. I know I'm very excited and very nervous.
yeah. I would love to see them go to the Super Bowl.
Me
That
too.
would
Me
be
too.
awesome.
Oh my gosh. I would definitely fly home for it. Like I would 100% need to be in like Packer zone for that game.
Yeah, I was thinking about going to Florida.
Yeah.
To
Well,
see the
yeah, I
game.
know. I have some friends and like my uncle lives in the Tampa Bay area too. So that would even be fun.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, fingers crossed. It'll be a good
yeah,
game.
yeah.
But thanks for having me. And I'm sorry about the power issue. Don't know what
Oh,
happened there, but thanks so much.
no, it's all right. It was a great interview. So
All right.
thanks, Kimber.
Awesome. Yeah, let me know when this is live and where it is and how I can share it and everything.
I will. I'll send
All
it
right.
out to you. Thanks, Kimber.
Awesome. Bye, Alex. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.